I grind for the love of the game. Sometimes it's bursting, sometimes it's bare. We grind for the love of the game. Stop listening to this and go pick up Kel'el Ware. Welcome back to
Quack, quack,
Rejecting the
quack.
Jump. Like, I wrote that rhyme last night. So I wrote that before I made the pickup in our league of record and before tonight's line. So I was very proud of that. I feel like my writing might have ushered in this new era.
You definitely saw that one into existence. That was and I gotta give Butcher credit. He gave you a pretty good shout out in our league for that pickup as well. So yeah, great timing on that one.
Yeah, that definitely put me up. Yeah, one of our league mates was just like 20 points and 15 rebounds for Ware. Flyin J, how do you do it? And I responded appropriately by saying I grind for the love of the game. So waiver wire is so tricky, a balance of getting out ahead of it versus cutting bait a little too early. Looking to just get steady guys in. And I had to get tricky. So we have two IL plus spots in our league. And I took the risk of putting D'Angelo Russell, who had a tag, into my spot, hoping I would get another tag to release him. And, I was working today and I just happened to be able to take a break like 15 minutes before game time. I saw that Giannis got the tag. So I was able to finagle D'Lo into the starting lineup and drop Giannis. And we'll deal with what to do with that tomorrow. But I felt like I got lucky on
The
that one.
the greatest gift
Mm.
in fantasy basketball is a guy who gets the probable tag a majority of
Oh yeah.
games. I feel like that is the most under talked about thing in fantasy. If you can get a
Yep.
guy that gets 30 of those, 40 of those, and plays through them all in a season, that's gold.
It's so true. And I don't know if any of you guys listening, Nate, I know you don't do public leagues. I always get sucked into one at the end. I feel like I'm one league short. And not only do they not have IL plus, but you have to make all your roster moves ahead of time, meaning there's never open waivers. So you're like deciding what streamers to pick up the day prior. If something breaks, you can't take advantage of it. And I just find myself losing interest. I took Joel Embiid in the fourth round. That's not been fun. I thought it was smart. It's not fun. And you can't slip anyone in. I have Brandon Ingram. So I'm just sitting here with this team and I'm like treading water. It's just not fun without IL plus. That's how good IL plus is.
Yeah, yeah. Every league should have it. Agreed. But
So before we
yeah,
get
so we're here.
started,
We're here this week though to talk about waiver wire ads.
I
Kind
do
of.
have
It's
to,
that.
before we get started, Nate, I have to give a
Yeah.
shout out. Um,
Let's hear it.
so as y'all know, longtime listeners might know that I often record this podcast, not today, in Pat's studio and gallery
Hmm.
in Goldendale, Washington. And you'll often see a gray cat named Emily who will make an appearance. And Emily sadly passed away this weekend. So I just wanted to recognize Emily, Emily the goat. You probably can't see my screen. Yep, see there she is. So this podcast is dedicated to Miss Emily, who lived to be 17 years old and was there for many of our great recordings. So Emily, please watch over this waiver wire intrigue podcast here tonight.
17 years old. That's getting up there. That's like the T Mac of the NBA there. Who's or maybe what's his name for the Heat?
Oh
Udonis
yeah, yeah,
Haslam,
yeah.
maybe.
Haslam. Yep, Udonis Haslam. What an impressive career, just getting checks. So that's for you, Emily. And she would want nothing less than to get into a fairly intriguing waiver wire right now. You go through these spells and it's just kind of boring. You're just treading through this, you're picking up Caldwell Pope again, or you're streaming through magic rotation pieces or whatever. But this is a really exciting time for the waiver wire. So we had to get into the
It's
booth,
it's
talk about it.
tricky because I feel like it is for most of the season. It's been a lot of the vets because the rookie class has been so far down, and
Right.
there just hasn't been a lot of new guys popping up at this point. And we knew it was going to happen eventually. His team kind of started to go into tank or injuries kind of come up. But it seems like just now they're starting to become some new names that are flashing on there with some higher upside,
Yep.
in addition to the really good streaming vets that have been there for a while.
Exactly. So the boring guys are still there, but we're injecting some exciting younger names into the
You know
fray.
I'm here for
So
the boring guys,
I know
so
you are. You really are. So let's start with a non-boring guy, Nate, and we got to get into Miami Heat rookie center Kel'el Ware. I mean, we have to right off the top. He is now 30% rostered. He was 21% rostered 24 hours ago when I was going in and doing some notes. So we're looking at the 15th pick in this past draft. Kevin O'Connor, formerly of the Ringers NBA Draft Guide, now of Yahoo Sports, had comped him shades of Miles Turner, which I thought was really interesting. He's a consensus 5-star recruit. I really like to look into the background just real quick because these players are going
Mhm.
to be in our lives for a while. And I just like want a baseline of understanding of who they are. So he was top 10 on every major prospect list in 2022. So he has
Yes, it
pedigree.
was.
Yeah. So where did he ended up finishing his career in at Indiana, but where did he start, Nate?
Well, he played at Oregon initially, and
Yeah.
this is he was definitely one of those guys that when he was at Oregon, he had a hard time staying healthy, but also he just lacked any aggression or I mean, watching him on the court, he just kind of drifted,
Okay.
shot some outside shots. He didn't look like he had any drive, and so I kind of had written him off a little bit as a bust for sure. He went to Indiana, he looked a little bit better. He still didn't look that good to me, and then he lands in Miami. And I,
Mhm.
in that pre-draft process, I thought this guy's gonna be a bust, bust, bust. And then he went to Miami, and I went, all right, he's got a shot. That is
Right.
the perfect spot for a guy who's has all the physical tools, but maybe needs the motor push to land in Miami. Like, what a
Right.
dream scenario for him.
So let's take a look at what's changed. So you're in Miami, you're a rookie, you're playing behind Bam Adebayo. He's a center only right now on Yahoo. But just this past Sunday, he played more minutes than Bam. He started the second half against Wemby and the Spurs alongside Bam.
Mm-hmm.
So immediately I was like, okay, he has like leave him on the wire at your own risk flashing on my Yahoo app. And so I'm starting to obsess about how to get him from there. That past week, as of Sunday, he was a 43rd ranked player. Then tonight happened. So the 21st, it's Tuesday night. He explodes. It makes his first career start alongside Bam Adebayo, plays the most minutes on the team. Here's a good Litke stat. He was a +8, which was second on the team in a game where they lost by 9 points, and he played the most minutes. So that's interesting. And coaches care about that sort of
Yeah.
thing. And he started a power forward, so look for that eligibility down the line. And I'll give you the line real quick, Licky. 38 minutes, 20 points,
Jeez.
16 boards, 2 blocks, 2 triples. So very Miles Turner esque. 8 of 17 from the field, 2 of 2 from the line. So I'm ready to toss around the league winner phrase on this one. Tell me I'm out of line, please.
Yeah, he's. I mean, if he can, if he can play north of 32 minutes, then you're going to be seeing some great production. I was reading today that he leads the Heat in blocks, yet is 10th in minutes.
Wow, that's nuts.
Yeah, which is wild for a team with Bam, who's perennially like in that first team, second team, all defensive. And the fact that they've been experimenting, and it seems to be well, it seems to be kind of working to an extent. I mean, they did lose to the Blazers tonight,
Got
but
yeah, blasted.
the fact that they're playing alongside of Bam, the combination kind of does make sense. You have two guys that are able to both play inside and outside,
Right.
and talk about defense. I mean, it gives a lot of protection for Tyler Hero and Scary Terry, who are not necessarily formidable on the perimeter.
It also get frees up from a team scheme for the Heat. It frees up Bam Adebayo to do his switchy, doesn't glue to one guy. It's just
Mm,
all over the court thing when you have another
yeah, good
formidable
point.
defender.
Yeah, good point.
So that is the screaming pickup. Stop listening to this. Check your league. Make a plan. Make a safety plan. Get Kel'el Ware because if he's still there, you're lucky.
Yeah, yeah, good call. Yeah, great highlight there. They're very topical and on the times. I'm gonna go next to who was the guy who was the hottest pickup 2 days ago or so, and just kind of re-examine where he's at here, and then kind of curious to see what we think about him. How big of a pickup is this? And that's Nick Richards,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yep.
who was just traded from Charlotte to the Suns, and so he's now at 40% rostered. So I imagine in almost everybody's league who's listening to this, he's probably on somebody's roster at this point. Um, his debut was scorching. I
Yeah.
mean, he came in 29 minutes, 7 of 8 from the field, 7 of 9 from the line for 21 points, 11 rebounds, which was really notable because that was his second most field goal attempts, free throw
Mm.
attempts, and minutes on the season,
And
all in his debut
he didn't
game.
even
Yeah,
actually start the game. Like,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, pretty amazing. And so it was. he followed it up with his second game as a pretty big dud, a 4 points,
Oh,
4 rebounds, but
oh,
it was in foul trouble the entire game. So I'm going to give him a pass on that one. And so was kind of curious, trying to think about, what could he be? What is the ceiling on this? Because it probably isn't that first game, and it's not
right,
the second game.
right.
And so last year, with the Mark Williams long time questionable situation, he did start 51 games, 10 points, 9 rebounds,
Yeah,
67% from the field, a little over a block of games, which was serviceable, really good.
yep.
And so kind of wondering if is that is that reasonable for this year?
Mhm.
Is it are we thinking that that's the floor? I did, and I kind of want to get your opinion. I want to get your opinion on this, but right before I do, I did just by pure chance happen to be watch the Suns game the night before they did the trade for this. So I was
Okay.
watching the Suns Hawks, and it was the Suns' rebounding effort was honestly kind of embarrassing.
Hmm.
That was the game that Conway went off for 22 boards,
Yes,
and
direct
every loose
correlation.
ball.
Yep,
It really felt like
yep,
management saw that game, saw
yep,
that nobody was even trying to rebound, and said we gotta do something.
yep.
And so
Good
I'm
point.
thinking that there's certainly the vacuum. The Suns need the rebounding, but I'm curious to hear what you think about his value this year
Um,
in comparison to what we saw last year of him as a starter.
that's a good point because the Suns forked over 3 first round picks, and this is a team doesn't have a whole lot of draft capital left in the cupboard. They have, I believe, their 2031 first round pick, but they've drained a
Oh
lot
no!
of.
Oh, you didn't hear that trade?
No,
There was a
what?
trade that just happened right before we went on the air. They
No,
just
break
got
it,
3 first round picks.
break it.
They traded their lone first round pick to the Jazz for 3 first round picks.
Their 2031 first round pick to the Jazz.
Yeah, for the lesser of in each of the years, the Jazz are gonna give them the lesser of the
Huh.
laundry list of first round picks they have each one of those years. So it's almost certainly gonna be a
Wow.
late first round pick, but they got one for three.
That's interesting. Trader Danny. So he's just betting against this aging roster.
Right. Yeah.
That's super interesting. No, I like that. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Breaking news. No, I drove right from work and set up, and here we are. So I didn't see that. But yeah, a team just gets embarrassed and they're like, okay, we'll throw in the extra second round pick. Let's make this happen. So as far as the player, Nick Richards, it's always, I have a background as, watching a lot of University of Kentucky games. He was a serviceable player in college. He was not a star. He looked, uh, he's a rim runner. He wasn't anything special. He was a late second round pick. So when you say 10 and 9 to me with good percentages, and he's a pretty good free throw shooter, it's kind of what I see happening. I think in that offense with Nurk out, he could have pop off or ceiling games. Then you're going to see some duds. It'll come out in the wash to being around 10 and 9 with good percentages and a block. So if that's something you need, I think it's definitely worth grabbing. But depending on the size of your league and how bad you need another center, I certainly wouldn't be anchored to it if somebody else came along. I wouldn't feel like dropping Nick Richards was a death sentence.
Hmm. That's good analysis there.
Yeah. So Nick Richards is a serviceable center. When Nurk comes back, I don't know if they're just done with him. You have a read on that? If they're just kind of washed their hands with Nurk?
I think that they got to play him a certain amount of minutes. Just
Right.
knowing him in Portland, he checks out and becomes a little bit of a distraction
Right.
if he isn't made to felt involved a little bit. So I think the coaching staff is going to be forced to play him a little bit. I see a bit of a platoon, but I think he's now obviously a season long hold. But I don't see top 10 center position
No.
coming the rest of the way.
No, exactly. He's a end of your roster solid producer. But
Hmm.
I think that first game could be the high water mark. You'll have similar lines, but I think that's the ceiling. Do you want to, Litke, go to Salt Lake City? It's beautiful this time of year. I know that you're a winter sports guy.
Yeah, well, we were just talking about it, and so we might as well. I would love to go ride Park City right now.
It's exciting too because silly season came early. So if you're looking for silly season production, and you're looking for some obscure names on the waiver wire, that's your place. But I am actually excited to talk about Isaiah Collier. Uh,
Hmm.
got to get in on this now. I feel like the Jazz rookie point guard, 23% rostered as of tonight, the 21st of January. another consensus 5-star recruit, only he was rated as the top prospect of 2023 by ESPN and Rivals. He was Georgia's Mr. Basketball, also the Naismith Prep Player of the Year. Um,
Hmm.
so
Wow.
high pedigree. I actually went back and listened to some of the podcasts that we did with Cade, who's just like a college basketball junkie that we did in April. And he reminded me, or it reminded me listening to it, that at times he was a top 3 prospect on the board of
Yeah,
that draft
I
class.
remember seeing him number one mocked at
Yeah.
one point during the season.
So I'm kind of perplexed as to why he fell to 29. Ringer Draft Guide had him 16th, and Hoop Intellect, who does awesome scouting, had him 8th. I was around 12th, but he drops all the way to 29th. The USC team had kind of a strange year, shadowed by the Bronny stuff. They weren't very good, so I think it affected his draft stock. But
He
this
was
man,
he was a bit he was kind of junky in college, really, too. I only watched a couple games, but I
yeah,
was unimpressed. I saw a lot of I had a lot of Jared Bayless vibes to
mm.
him. But maybe it's just the games I watched.
Do you remember he went to UW and he played for the Sixers? Do you remember a player named Tony Warden Jr.?
Yes.
You remember him? So he could.
Yeah.
He's a guy, especially in points leagues where you're not worried about percentages. God, he would hurt you there. He gave me Tony Warden vibes in high school, and that guy could really score, but he was not a winning player. So
I feel
the
like Tony Wharton had like a 45-point game once
he
or
sure
something.
did. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I'd have to look up the exact number, but he put up some crazy lines around silly season. But man, this dude's putting up some dimes, and the dimes are hard to find on the waiver wire.
yes.
So since been inserted into the Jazz starting lineup, he's hit double-digit dimes in 3 straight, and he's had 20 points in 2 of those 4 games. So look no further for assists off the waiver wire. As far as if he stays in the lineup, I mean they are resting players like Colin Sexton and it's not as relevant, but Walker
Keontae
Kessler.
George.
Yeah. Walker Kessler's getting rest days at age 22 or whatever he is. So I have no idea what's going on there, but Isaiah Collier is an interesting player. And I would grab him if he's available because it's hard to find dimes like that. Where are you at on how interested you're in picking him up?
Yeah, he's it's been interesting because I saw he had a couple pop games and then looked and was like, oh, Keontae George and Sexton were out. But then he's been keeping that up kind of when those guys have come back.
Yeah.
And it seems like almost like the Jazz, between those two and then as well as off the bench, the veteran scorer,
Oh, Clarkson? He's been out.
Clarkson, yeah.
Yeah.
Between those three, they've been one of those guys has been out at
Yeah.
all given
Yep.
times, and
Yep.
so his minutes have been up and his production has been up despite who he's been playing with in the lineup. I've been really
Yeah.
impressed by him and surprised as well. I didn't really see it,
Right.
and so he's been honestly he's kind of given off a little bit of see what you think about this. Um, Current Ben Simmons vibes.
Yeah.
He's averaging the last 2 weeks. He's averaging 9, 5, and 9. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe not current, but maybe like mid, kind of mid career
Right.
Ben Simmons ish stat lines.
Well, he's a better scorer, and he is stout. He's a little 6'3" mushroom. He's
Yeah, he is
yeah. He kind of looks like a running back.
for sure.
Yeah, and he hit that game winner the other night. It was like a contested layup. He drove to the
Oh,
hoop.
I missed that.
Yeah, he hit a game winner. I forget against who. But yeah, Collier, is he a player that you're afraid to miss or you're willing to let go?
Oh, it's a good question. I guess I'd be willing to let go, but I would also at the end of the year like look back and be like, well, how did we not see this one? Or how did
Right.
I not see this one? So I think I'm probably a little further down on than consensus perhaps on him, but I
Yeah,
think a lot of that is my bias coming into the season. So take that with a grain of salt.
I will. You got to let go of those biases.
I know. Josh Allen will never be good. He was bad at Wyoming, and he will never be good in the NFL. Mark my words.
Josh Allen. Oh
Yeah,
man.
sorry for cross sports there, but
No, it's allowed here in this space. Okay, so we did Collier. What do you got for me?
the so I wanted to go over to I wanted to kind of get your general philosophical opinion on something. And this is
Mm.
when you're targeting a pickup, targeting an ad, you need somebody that brings some scoring to the table, some shooting. So I was wondering, do you with with a established player that that isn't necessarily stepping into a new role, just kind of has kind of gone on a hot streak, 2 games, 3 games, 4 games. When
Mm.
you look at that, a player like that, are do you feel like, oh, this is the time to buy in because they're hot and I can kind of extract that value right now? Or do you look at that and say, hey, past performance is no indication of what they're going to do in the future? They had 2 good games. That doesn't mean that there's going to be a new one the next week or next game.
Well, I immediately would turn to my bias about that player.
Oh yeah.
Give me an example of a veteran player that fits that profile.
Okay, so veteran players would be guys that I think that I immediately spring to mind would be like Hardaway, Gary
Mm.
Trent Jr., Corey Kisper, Beasley, Grady Dick. Kind of like just
Okay.
those type of players.
Like you just
And
named a bunch of point streamers.
yeah, and say the previous 2 3 weeks
Yeah.
they hit like five threes like the last 3 nights in a row.
You know what's interesting about that category of player is I feel like you got to guess correctly because it's all good for me. It's going to be schedule based. These are 3 and 4 night guys. These are guys where I'm trying to eke out the most value out of my waiver moves and attack a certain category if I need it. And I feel like if they've strung together a couple really good games, by the time I go to pick them up, I'm going to get 6 points on 2 of 12
Mm-hmm.
shooting. Those guys tend to be like, okay, I see the schedule. I'm going to hit ad. I'm going to get the 3 games and 4 nights. You ride it out and you hope you get a hot streak. But with a player like that, by the time you pick up a Malik Beasley or a Grady Dick or a Tim Hardaway, and they've had a couple 20-point games, and you let those games happen on the waiver wire. And again, this is a bit of a bias. For me, I feel like I'm probably going to pick those guys up as they sizzle or as they fizzle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're more thinking they're going to turn into a pumpkin like the
Yeah,
moment you grab them there. Yeah.
a little bit. And I think that's why I'm always hunting for upside over like, I think this player is more likely to get me the, 7 threes I think I need in 2 games or whatever. Because I
Yeah.
just don't trust those type of profiles. I'm just always hunting for upside and hoping that the player I pick up will be someone I feel like I can't drop.
Right. That makes sense. That's a different way to like look at the as your pickups there. I always struggle with this one because I have that same thought. It's like, okay, this player is kind of on a heater. Is this, because sometimes heaters last a month, sometimes they last 2 games. It feels like it's pretty hard to predict. And so, in any case, I wanted to just take a look and for the listeners out there, whichever side that you fall on this category, whether you kind of believe in, see the heater, ride it while you can, or avoid it. I wanted to kind of highlight a handful of players that over this last week I would say that they're on little mini heaters and jump in. These are just real quick hitters, and
I like
if you
this.
have opinions on any of these guys here.
So we could
Um,
listeners could consider this a like immediate streamer segment.
yeah, exactly. These guys have had good last 2 to 5 last games.
Let's go.
So the first would be Keon Ellis of the Sacramento Kings. He's last 2 weeks has been hitting 3.2 threes a game, which is a real huge
Oh,
outlier on that. So he's the 87th ranked player in the league, and he's only 13% averaged or rostered.
right. I like Ellis. I like his game. It's so fantasy friendly. He has trouble sustaining a role above 20 minutes when no one's injured.
Yeah.
And so when the Kings are fully healthy, I actually haven't picked him up this year. I like the player. He's an interesting guy, and I think like if he's getting the minutes and he's compiling the stats, I'd be more likely to take a chance on him than that pile of Tim Hardaways that you mentioned. I kind of think of them all in a similar vein. But Ellis has a more well-rounded profile, and there's some intrigue. I would put Anthony Black in that category. He's a guy I just picked up in my public league that similar to Ellis, if he's getting enough minutes, there's enough intrigue there that I'm going to pick up a guy like that over the pile of Hardaways.
I love it. I love this description of
Pile of
this
Tim
type of
Hardaways.
players. It's so accurate there. I can just visualize it. Oh yeah, Anthony Black's a good one too. I almost included in this, but he seemed like it had almost a slightly different profile. Um, the next one I have here is I'm gonna co-sign on this one. You can feel free to take a break on this commenting on this one, but this would be
Dylan Brooks.
well, it'd be Lou Dort.
Okay.
He's
He went 0 of
since Hartenstein
6.
has gone down, he's been hitting 3.8 threes per game, which is a little above, but was really what we saw last time when Holmgren went down before Hartenstein came back. He had a big heater, and so I think he's a must roster guy right now, and but maybe not that hot.
I think Lou Dort's a landmine in general. I feel like, I mean, I've never rostered him, but the other day, what did he go 0 for 6? He had like no stats besides his missed shots.
Right? Yeah, yeah.
So
His
like,
lows are
it's so low.
it's kind of amazing that a guy who plays 37 minutes that
Yeah.
like gets no rebounds, no assists, but
His best stats is minutes and the Dortcher Chamber nickname.
it's a great nickname.
Yeah, he's a guy as I've ignored his whole career. But I'll be honest, there has been times where he was on the top of the waiver wire and he was the guy. And I texted you this the other day about another zombie who we may or may not talk about. But there'll be times where Dort's the player I need and he's producing, and I've been like, huh, yeah, that's interesting. He can produce. It just seems like these days he's more empty calories more often, it seems like. But he's the Dortcher Chamber, so I don't want to be a hater.
Yeah, I think for the next week,
Yeah.
this until Hartenstein comes back, he's a guy to grab. But after that, I think it's a drop. But
Okay.
next one, as a just happens to be having a little mini heater at the moment. 7% rostered Max Strus.
Oh,
He's hitting
maximum Struce.
yeah, three threes a game over the last 2 weeks. And Mobley's out for some period of time. How
Yeah,
do you feel about Max Strus?
yeah, calf strain. They haven't announced a timetable, but Josh was inferring that he thinks it's about going to be about a week. I like Max Strus. I'll never forget how excited you were when he went to Cleveland. All you,
Yes.
yeah, I think it was our Swish Miss wish list pod last year. Say that 3 times fast. You were just wishing for a serviceable small forward on that roster, and so
Yeah.
when he went there, I was just like so excited for you. Yeah, he can produce. He's not, again, it's gonna be need to be schedule dependent. I'm gonna need to see that he has a 3 and 4 stretch or something like that, and have a roster spot that's dead enough to pick up him, Max Strus. But when he's producing, he can make threes, he can get you some steals, he can score. I think he's a good player. And when his minutes are secure and somebody's out of the lineup, I think he's a solid pickup to get some, low level production, and you can drop him right back to the wire, no problem. Or some of these hotter names come
Comfortably
along.
drop them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So don't hesitate, in my opinion. Obviously, a Ware, a Collier, some of the hotter names, where there's more, and even in my opinion, in Anthony Black, he put up a really nice line tonight in the start. I'd probably rather have them over Struce, but you know what you're getting with Struce. So when he's giving it to you, grab him.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair. Three more little quick hitters. The next one to be 8% rostered, Jose Alvarado. Last 2 weeks, randomly is hitting threes. He's not much of an outside shooter, but he's hitting 2.6 threes per game, 3.3 over the last week.
Love me some Grand Theft Alvarado. Yeah, and when there is a hole in that lineup, he's a sneaky player. I mean, he gets steals in bunches. He can
For
score and
sure.
get you some assists. Depending on the depth of your league, when he's getting big minutes, I think he's worth having.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. And then this one, I feel like maybe has been neutralized by the first guy that you talked about. And frankly, I don't know anything about Miami, and I'm totally confused by the whole roster. Would be
Yeah,
Nikola Jovic.
Jovic.
35% roster, but the last 2 weeks he's on a heater. 2.4 threes, 14, 5, and 5.
My favorite thing about Nikola Jovic is that, if you do an underdog daily draft, he always has an ADP because there's just enough dudes in the room that click the wrong guy. And so he always like has an ADP that'll be above like very draftable players that day. Like you can always find him. I like his game. I like his statistical profile. I would obviously much rather have Ware, but I think in your average size league, he should probably be on someone's roster. He can get you out of position dimes. He can score a little bit. It's hard to trust their rotations.
Mm-hmm.
They do this thing with Hayward Highsmith where he gets minutes and then he fades away and then he comes back. And I feel like everyone needs Highsmith to go away, whether it be Ware or Jovic, because he doesn't do anything for fantasy or an NBA team.
Right. And he also blocks. I mean, you didn't even mention Jaime as well. I
Yeah,
feel like he's also
he
in
blocks
that
him
log
too.
jam and gets
Yep,
blocked in there. But yeah.
exactly. Yeah, no, I love Jovic. He's my favorite player that you've mentioned here as far as upside and the statistical profile.
Oh yeah. Last guy here, 21% rostered, probably already snatched in competitive leagues, but that would be Grayson Allen.
Mm.
Um, Last 2 weeks has kind of gotten healthy and is really, really on a heater. I mean, he's hitting 3.1 threes per game, 59% from the field as
Mm.
well.
We didn't do you any favors when we played last week in our big matchup.
Well, having 11 out of 14 guys injured was I think that was my main issue with that week. I think I texted you that at one point. It was 14 guys and 11 of them out. It was like, wow, this is crazy.
I hate it when a guy like Grayson Allen has the best schedule and you have to pick him up. But he's a blind spot for me a little bit. But I'll never forget the season. Was it just last year? Yeah, he was like all of a sudden a top 60 guy, glue guy, and he's
Mm-hmm.
producing those type of numbers again. Is that what you're telling
Over
me?
the last 2 weeks. Yeah, over the
Yeah.
last 2 weeks. So he's last 2 weeks he's averaging 13-3,
Okay.
1.3 steals with those threes. So
Okay.
that's solid. Last season it was really glued together by shooting 50% from the field
Right.
with those 2.7 threes. I mean, those numbers are kind of incongruent a little bit.
Yeah. When Grayson Allen gets the minutes, he's a glue guy for your roster.
Yeah.
You know, he might make the all decade glue guy second team.
Well, stay tuned for perhaps one of these upcoming pods.
Yes, look out for the Glue Guys episode because we usually drop that in January when rotations are starting to make a little more sense in most places, and that is in the works. Well, as Natron clean pours himself a little bit of what do you got there? What are you pouring?
This is our cab that we made. Cuckoo
Oh,
cab, Red Mountain,
oh, Red Mountain. Oh, that's a
Red
nice
Mountain,
AVA.
Washington.
Nice.
One of our most expensive grapes we purchased.
Red Mountain is trendy for sure. It's good stuff though. That's enough about the AVAs of Washington State. Let's go back to Salt Lake City, where the grapes I don't think, grow quite as well as out here in the Pacific
You're gonna
Northwest.
go Filipowski?
Not quite. We're going moderate intrigue, um, but there's a fun Litke question embedded, which is really why we're talking about second year wing Bryce Sensible here. So Bryce Sensible, Utah Jazz, 12% rostered. He's a small forward, power forward. Florida's 2022 Mr. Basketball. He was a four-star recruit. Third team All Big Ten as a freshman at Ohio State. And the 16 points and 5 rebounds, that's kind of what he profiles to. That's kind of what he does. You know, he had a really good percentages all around. And I think this is an awesome Licky question because this is kind of the player I think we're getting. So let that be your hint. So Bryce Sensible recently became the second Jazz player, listen carefully, Blakey, to ever average 25 points and 5 3-pointers per game over a 3-game span while coming off the bench. Got all that?
Yeah, yeah.
Can you name the first? And I'll give you a
It's gotta
hint.
be Clarkson.
It's not Clarkson. I'm going to give you a hint because it's a tough one.
Okay.
It happened in November of 2017.
Wesley Matthews?
That's a really good guess. I don't remember his rookie year. It might have been a little before that. Uh, Actually, didn't even mention that he's a rookie.
Gordon Hayward?
No, not quite Hayward. The player that you might have forgotten about. He went to Duke. He had a really high release on his jump shot. Yeah.
Man. Oh,
He was a one-dimensional
I
scorer.
don't
He,
know.
he could stroke it. Okay, I'm going to give it to you. This is actually really hard. Do you remember Rodney Hood?
Rodney Hood, yes,
Yeah.
he was a Blazer for a
Yes, he
minute, and
was. Yep.
on that roster that went to the Western Conference Finals. Yeah, he was right. He was one dimensional for sure. Great scorer when he was on.
Shout out to Rose Garden Revival, my 10 plus year points league that you'll hear me reference for for a freak out over a trade around this time that was Rodney Hood for Otto Porter Jr. I don't remember which side, but the league screamed collusion, and I was on the side they were upset about.
Otto Porter Jr. for a while there was him.
It was a
He was the
points
most
league.
like
Yeah,
yeah, he was like the
people
most
loved.
underachieving him
Yeah,
that
that's true.
has happened.
He was. Yeah, I've never heard you use that reference. Did you just learn that today?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
That
nice.
and swole. I use the word swole now.
He was him. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Otto Porter Jr. did get $100 million that proved he was him. But anyways, back to Bryce. Back to Bryce Sensible. He does remind me of Rodney Hood because I feel like he's kind of one dimensional. He's a scorer.
Hmm.
But in deeper leagues, I'm going to give this guy a spin at this point. I think because at the very least, he's solid point streamer with upside for more. I looked it up with Laurie, Markkinen, or John Collins out of the lineup. You're getting about 13 points, 3 boards, 3 triples in just over 20 minutes. So he's interesting,
Wow.
just a
Yeah.
player to watch, a player you can stream. And I like streaming players with a little mystery box if they're giving me a similar profile to a junker from the Tim Hardaway category.
Now I have a complete blind spot to him. You
Hmm.
said he's a second year player, is that right?
Yeah, yeah, as a second year player.
Yeah, it's for some reason he's just somebody I've kind of scanned past his whole time in Utah at this point, and so I'll
It's
have to
fair.
pay attention a little bit more there.
Yeah.
But
Have a look. Have yourself a look. Yeah, yeah. Again, he's went to
yeah,
Ohio State, who just won the national
I hate
championship.
that.
Oh,
Yeah, you hate that.
you do hate it.
But the John Collins injury in Utah is starting to get a little spooky at this point.
Okay, quick
It's
licky
having a little
question.
Mark Williams vibes from last year.
I'm going to ask you a strategy question that's just kind of come to my mind here, based on John Collins. So you have a player like John Collins where he's really not doing anything for you. If you don't have an injury spot, you can just tuck him away in. He's just kind of eating up a roster spot. And you get these veterans that aren't producing, whether it be because they play in Utah, and you they start clogging your roster up. I guess Nurk before if you don't have him tucked away in a roster
Yeah,
spot, just these underperforming veterans. And it remind like a player like Bobby Portis. You keep Bobby Portis because you want to take the games where Giannis isn't playing. But if you don't have Giannis, then some weeks you just have the 240th ranked player, or you have just like a middling veteran who isn't producing for you. So it's really a two-part question. Would you rather be waiting on a player with high upside like John Collins, or rostering a player who most weeks isn't even worth having, but he gives you the occasional boom when a star player on his team is out, or somebody you're just kind of riding like a top 200 player? Or would you rather take some L's and hope John Collins gets traded or gets minutes? Like, what do you prefer? Which mess do you prefer? Middling veteran or player with upside who isn't playing and there's no clear path? You don't have enough information because it's the Jazz.
yeah, it's a really good question, and I feel like it's really like accurate this time of year when the injuries are piling up, and you kind of have to make a decision on
Yeah,
who do you cut, who do you not cut.
yeah, exactly.
I think it's a good question. I think in general, and this is how I'm not operating this particular year, but in general, I prefer I prefer to just be ruthless and go for wins each week. I would much rather cut a guy and then feel bad, 6 week later and be like, I had that guy in my team and I cut him,
Yep,
but I won that week because I
yep,
think that at the end of the day, uh, if you have, I should say, if you have any chance of getting a bye in your playoffs,
yeah,
then it's worth it. Or if you if doing that cut's going to give you a chance to even make the playoffs, then I would take those options because I think those are so valuable, and I would just much
right.
rather have that win than be better 5 weeks later and be
Yep.
in a position I don't want to be in.
Sometimes you just have to roll the dice with the cut. I was listening to what you said and processing it, coming up with my analysis. Sometimes you have to roll the dice on a cut and just hope you can play a game of chicken. And I think a good recent example, and I got lucky in our league record, was Tari Eason. You just couldn't keep
Mm,
eating those zeros, especially
yep.
when you have IL plus. You just need those spots to manipulate. You can't hold a
I,
guy
I
like that.
yeah, those are the funniest types to
Yeah.
add that because it was one of those things where you go, I'm gonna pick them up, and I have a 5-day window I can hold them for.
Right. Right.
And then at the end of the 5-day window, either I have a great guy that's for my team, or I have to drop him.
Yep.
And you just kind of hope that pile of Hardaways, like you say, hits.
And like anything else in life, you just have to decide what your personal limits are. you know.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing where I want to transition over to where my personal limits are. Uh, And my personal limits are I have no interest in drinking
Thank God.
corporate large scale coffee.
I wouldn't want
And
that for
so
you.
for that reason I love Sealbridge. So head over to sealbridgecoffee.com/PTJ. There you're gonna get 4 pounds of fair trade, organic, really high quality coffee delivered to your doorstep for basically the same price as this corporate coffee. And with that, you're gonna also get a vintage 90s NBA card for free with that. And so you might as well uh, take advantage of this offer. And so once again, that's sealbridgecoffee.com/PTJ.
Did you say large scale coffee? It was so, so good.
Yeah, like the mid-scale coffee.
It totally works, but yeah, it was so good. We're always finding new ways to let you know that you kind of suck if you're buying Starbucks every week. Like, let's go. Like, why are you doing this? It's a waste of like why
We've
are you
been
paying the same
we've
price
been
for worse coffee?
sued by Starbucks multiple times, and so we cannot say corporate or large scale coffee too often. Otherwise, the bots trigger us, and then our ad dollars just kind of go to waste.
It works for me because of course I have a picture of Howard Schultz on a punching bag in my garage. So yeah, good read.
So transitioning over to the popular new game, which I just invented, uh, and so that is we have 4 guys here, and the question is season long hold
Mm,
or high end streamer.
love
And
it.
so
I
that
have a similar thing for you. That exact
oh
phrase.
nice. Oh really?
Yeah, this is
Wow,
great.
this is just well we can just when you do the recording or the editing you can just copy and paste then that would be helpful for saving time.
Thanks, St.
Uh
John.
Yeah. So obviously by season long hold, it's obviously like air quotes if possible, drop these guys on
Sure.
Sundays and like
Correct.
or if they're injured, they're out of there. But kind of a luxury stash here. But so starting with the first guy, uh gonna go with Spencer Dinwiddie.
Mm. That is
So curious to hear what
situational.
you think about him.
Yep. That's situational. He's been on and off one of my rosters throughout the season. When Kyrie's in the lineup, obviously when Luka's back, you drop him like a bad habit. Um, but yeah, he needs to be getting minutes because he's just not very good at this point, as far as a real life player. So he needs to be getting 30 plus minutes. Right now, I think I would try to keep him. But with Kyrie back, he can put up some duds too. So when Kyrie and Luka are out, he's a must roster player. As soon as one of those two guys comes back, he's marginal. When they're
Mm.
both back, he's dust.
Yeah, I think that's totally accurate. Without Luca, he's averaging 19 minutes a game, 6 points, 2.5 assists. With Luca out of the lineup, he's averaging 30 minutes a night, 14 rebounds, 5.2 assists, and
Say
all the
14
associated
rebounds?
goodie. Sorry, 14 points, little over 5 assists.
Yeah. And then did you have his numbers with no Luka and Kyrie?
I don't have that one,
That's the
but
one
I'm
you
guessing they're
want.
probably through the roof. But
Yeah, exactly.
um,
Yeah, he can't be a season
yeah.
long hold just because if your team is going to do anything, Luka has to come back, so he can't be season long.
Yeah, good point. Good points. Next one, and this is I think the trickiest one of this grouping, or I thought. Well, let's see what you think here. And that's your boy,
Yep.
but Buddy Hield.
Mm. Yeah, definitely not a season long hold for me, dog.
Yeah, he's 35% rostered.
Yeah,
Uh,
he's over rostered. Yeah, he needs to. I mean, he needs to be getting. I mean, his minutes have been kind of all over the shop since he came out the gate really hot.
yeah, he had that like I mean the stretch when right in the beginning of the season where he was
Yep.
just on fire, making 5 threes a night. Since then he went on a really exceptionally cold streak, and so the only thing that gives me a little bit of pause with your boy Mr. Plow
It's not.
is
I hate Buddy Hield.
is
I did call him Mr. Plow. That was legendary.
you did, yeah, I know, but
Uh,
so over December, January, he's shooting 31% from three. He's never had a season in his entire career where he shot sub 36. So there is some question of is this just uh a really bad shooting snap that he's on there. And so and could he bounce back and be that player that we saw earlier in the season? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know.
Let me take a look. Okay, so he's at 2.73s on the season, which is an interesting number for me because his line before the season started was 2.8. And I put the under in that in a bunch of season long parlays.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
so I'm personally invested in him continuing to be below that 2.8 line. A lot of those are doing incredibly well, and he's the one that I look back and I'm like, I just don't believe in the player. I didn't believe in the minutes. It was I came up with some of those when I went on Michael Fiddle's podcast, and that was one of the lines we both really liked.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I
and
remember that. Yeah,
so I'm rooting
yeah.
against Buddy.
So far they're hitting. I mean, the stocks have been there. He's averaging 1.8 the last 2 weeks, but we'll see. I think that's he seems to be on a lot of long term rosters, but we'll see. Um, so next one, staying in Golden State, Dennis Schroeder, 55% roster.
Yeah, the Golden State. It's just such a I'm so disinterested in what's going on over there fantasy wise.
Yeah,
But you recouped a little bit of if you for some reason didn't drop him after the trade and you kind of waited it out, you've recouped a little bit of the value. He's a low end. Do you have the numbers? I think what I would say is he's a very low end hold, who I'm willing to cut when a hot free agent comes along. But if he's the worst player on my roster, it's not that bad.
yeah, yeah. I mean, as I think
You
that's
haven't cut him, have you?
really accurate. I have not cut him yet. He's on that fringe at this point, and so I've each week I regret not cutting him the previous week,
Yeah.
but he does seem to be rebounding a little bit. I mean, as a net, he was crushing it.
Oh
18
yeah.
points, 3.5 boards, 6.5 assists. As as a Warrior, 15 points and 4.5 assists on really horrendous shooting.
Horrendous.
The shooting is now has kind of rebounded, like you had mentioned, in the last 2 weeks. I mean, he's averaging 46% the last week, so it is coming back up a little bit, but I don't know what to do with him. I guess I'm just really asking for personal advice.
Well, let me put it this way, and I don't have any moves to make, so I guess this is a direct recommendation to you and your roster. If I had Dennis Schroeder, I would cut him for Collier in a heartbeat. That's just how
No.
I play fantasy. I would cut him for Collier, just because
Okay.
if he continues to have that role Collier, then I think he just hit a home run. But if not, that's okay. I have more flexibility. I can move on. I can stream that spot. I'm not afraid to lose what I think Schroeder's going to give you. And you can wait for Steph to he's an older player. And if they start to fall out of it, I think Schroeder's going to be he could be a top 90 to 110 somewhere in there, but I'm not worried about holding on to that. I'm using that spot to pick up a hot young guy.
Yeah, yeah, fair point. Okay, so last one here, and
Okay,
this would qualify as one of these young guys that you may or may not be interested in here.
let's go.
Uh, and that is this one has the highest roster percentage. I will say that. So that is 44%. Asar Thompson.
Yeah. He's a guy I try to make room for when he's getting. I mean, yeah, I don't like leaving him on the wire, but it's we just haven't seen the consistency yet. But I just want to give a quick shout out. I just want to give a little love to whoever it was in our league that dropped him in Thompson to me in the first week of the season because that's a tough drop. And and not to flex. I bring that up to say that I think he's the better Thompson twin. But I don't like
Amen is wait, Asar is.
Amen's the better Thompson twin,
Oh,
clearly.
sure. Yeah, 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 yeah.
But there's another Thompson twin available, and the way Detroit's playing, Cade looking like I mean, if he's the most valuable player, he's got to be an all star. I have a ticket for his most valuable player. I'd like to go check that after this podcast. But he has just turned that team around. I mean, he's reaching ceiling. Cade Cunningham's a superstar. You agree?
I wouldn't maybe use the word super, but I would say star for sure.
Okay, I'd say super. I mean, having that team around 500 is incredible.
Yeah.
That's really impressive, and I think that they I'd want to bring Sar Thompson along for the ride. So I would like to roster him. Calling him a season long hold is hard because we've seen the bottom fall out time and time again from his minutes, and his shooting can be so atrocious. But if I'm looking for upside in blocks and steals, then I would try to make sure he's on my roster if I have the spot.
Yeah, it's been nice to see him back in the lineup from that blood clot issue. I feel like there was a
Yeah,
moment where I kind of wondered if he was even going to be playing the season. I kind of thought maybe we might see a Chris Bosh situation where he's going to be on the shelf for the entire year.
Yeah, no
So
doubt.
I'm glad to see he's there, and his minutes are ticking up a little bit. And it seems like they're at this point he has no conditioning restrictions. It's just a matter
Right.
of just kind of getting the time.
Yeah, he's a good get out in front of it guy. To any Detroit Pistons fans still listening to Projecting the Jump, I would like to apologize and just say that sometimes it takes Nate a little longer to come around, and I think in a future pod that Litke will offer up that Cade Cunningham's become a superstar. That's my prediction.
Yeah, fair. All
I
right,
can't.
fair. Yeah, we'll put that on the wall. We'll put
Sick.
that on the prediction wall.
All right, so apologizing to Detroit Pistons fans. I'd like to apologize to all Seattle Supersonic fans listening to this because this is a Projecting the Jump first. But I decided it needed to be done. So, Licky, you remember the other day when I was having a moment and I actually reached
Oh
out.
no, is this happening?
I actually reached out to Boucher and I needed steals and I
Oh
needed
my
just I
gosh.
needed the profile of one Casey Wallace. And I was
Mm.
and I was thinking to myself, I was like, I don't have to live like this anymore. You know what? I'm ready to do it. And then I didn't, and I waited and I picked up Tari Eason and everything worked out for me. But for the first time, I'm going to go ahead and bring up a Zombie Sonic, and we need to talk about, is Casey Wallace the next Jalen Suggs in waiting?
Whoa.
That's my question. Uh, because I think he might be. You know what? I'm a big fan of this guy, but
Yeah.
I'm calling him Swap Meet Suggs for now. But I think you could do worse at the end of your roster. It's funny because again, my question on him, and I'm going to read a little stuff, but I want to know: is he an elite streamer or is he a low level hold? So we
Hmm.
got an example on the 17th of January with SGA out. He gives you in a 27 minute or 37 minutes. Casey
Hmm.
Wallace 10 points, six boards, 5 assists, 4 steals, and 2 triples. I love these sort of lines. So I guess my
He's
question
everywhere.
is he an emerging glue guy with upside for more? Because it kind of feels like he should be on someone's roster in a standard 9 cat league. So what say you? Cason Wallace, Zombie Sonic, point guard, shooting guard, 25% rostered. Is this an elite streamer or is he a low level hold?
You know, I love his inclusion in this because he's somebody that I also agree. Love the player.
Yeah,
Young guy, upside. He's
super
when
young
you
guy.
watch him play, he plays with tenacity. He played in their playoff games, big minutes,
Yeah,
and did really well for him. So he clearly has the trust of the organization, um, and he doesn't he's not afraid by any stretch of the imagination. I I've been waiting for some sort of statistical pop from him a little bit because I think that right now what I've seen is that the production on the court isn't matching the box score production. So he's a better real
right.
life player than fantasy player. And so whether that is minutes, I mean like when he like as you mentioned, when he's actually getting these north of 30 minutes, yes,
Yeah,
he's great. But I see just have been seeing a lot of games where I'm like, I almost pick him up, and then look really
yeah.
closely at him, and I see, okay, he gets 6 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, but with a plus 19, and you're like, okay, like so clearly he's good. Um, but a young Jalen Suggs, I love that comp. I think that's a really good comp.
Just the steals are always there. He struggles with his shooting. He's super athletic, tenacious defender. I think his style of play, it's a good comp. And as kind of a fantasy guy in waiting, I think that's the player we hope he becomes. Um, and I just feel like when you ask me about some of these low level Tim Hardaway Junko streamers, I would rather take a chance on Casey Wallace. Obviously, anytime Shea or the Bronco, Jalen Williams missed a game the other day, and he's an automatic ad. But once I add for that game, I'm looking for reasons to hold. I'm looking for reasons to hold, is how I'd put it.
Yeah, yeah, I love this. There's a little bit of crowd happening in on that team,
I
but
wouldn't
right,
know.
like
No.
he's he's an injury away, injury and a half away before becoming really good. And I think it's one of these things where it's likely you roster him this year and then he blows up
Right.
again next year or the year afterwards, and you go,
Right.
I did have him then
Which is kind of like Suggs for you, because I happened this year.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
And I
that
will mention before
hurts.
we toss it back to you, you mentioned likely. It's funny because the zombies gave up a lot to get Casey Wallace. They actually on draft night they traded the draft rights to Isaiah to Derek Likely and
Oh right.
the albatross contract of one Davis Bertans. So the zombies had to absorb that from Dallas in order to get Casey Wallace.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I forgot about that trade. Because yeah, Dallas moved back. It
Yeah.
was interesting.
Nice little nug. Okay, well I
Yeah.
feel a little dirty, so please quickly distract me.
All right. So last one, and I think you'll be interested in this one because it's a young guy with upside, perhaps.
Okay.
And this is somebody that's been out there all season. It's not somebody that's blowing up with different minutes as of late. It's just kind of something that it's been a number of weeks and long enough that I think it's like, does this guy actually deserve a higher roster percentage?
Okay.
And that is Jalen Wells for the
Mm-hmm.
Memphis Grizzlies.
I've given him a nice long look. Like you're going through the liquor cabinet and you're always passing over the Digestivo, and you're like, I could pour this, and then you just never quite do. Is that what you're drinking? Nice, cheers.
Is not D zero no.
Gosh, YouTube viewer, please enjoy. But yeah, no, I like he's interesting, and what shocks me was on Twitter, and I was corresponding with Fiddle about the Rookie of the Year odds and how ridiculous this race is. He jumped up to like plus 475 like a week ago. Wells,
Wow,
and
really?
that's how big of a mess this thing is.
Some desperation out there on the market. Or just
Yeah,
it's wild like how big the swings one bad game and somebody swings plus 200 this way or that way.
it's insane. But yeah, I watched one of his games. He's a confident shooter. It was the Sacramento game, as he's from the area. It was in Sacramento. Big body kid, great, good shooter. But Gigi Jackson just played his first game just last night on Martin Luther King Day, and they're 12 deep again. So the minutes could fluctuate quite a bit, but the player's really interesting. If he was on a team like the Jazz or like the Brooklyn Nets, he would might be must roster right now.
Yeah. I I've been really impressed by watching him. I mean, he's played 2 seasons at Division II Sonoma State, the Seawolves.
Oh, the Seawolves.
Um, yeah, before transferring to
It's a Seawolf.
Washington. Yeah, I don't know exactly what it is, but before transferring to Washington State, go Cougs.
Mm, oh,
Um,
oh, no Coug.
and
There's no Cougs fans listening.
yeah, probably not. Yeah, there's very few of them that exist.
They killed the
But he was
Pac-12.
a second round pick. Well, I don't know if it was their fault, but
No, it's not their fault.
the no, exactly Big Ten's fault. But
Yeah, seriously.
he was a second round pick, and I was impressed by watching him. I also watched the end of that Martin Luther King game versus the Timberwolves, and I was amazed at the end of the game. They put him face guarding Anthony Edwards 1-on-1,
Oh, I didn't catch
and
that. That's a good nugget.
and and it was amazing to see their confidence in him. That they said, "All right, you are going to be taking this number one assignment." Anthony Edwards had been blowing up to that point, and so I think when I saw that, I mean, obviously he's been a great shooter, like you mentioned. He's tall. He's 6'7", probably 7 foot tall with his hair,
Yep.
and but the fact that they're giving him those defensive assignments means that they do have a level of trust in him that I think that maybe those minutes are going to be a little stickier than I thought earlier in the season, where I thought maybe it was he's on a heater or matchups or whatever it is. I kind of thought, all right, this is somebody that I think I want to be keeping a closer eye on.
That's a trademark Natron clean nugget. Excuse me, I just put a piece of a gummy in my mouth because it's close to the end of the pod. But
How many CBDs?
it's a half and half.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but we're in Oregon, so fuck you. Um, but that's a great nugget about putting him on Ant-Man. And I'm curious if he was on Ant-Man on that last possession when Edwards jacked up that atrocious 3-pointer. Did you see
You
that
know,
last shot?
I was at work on the bottling line and my feed kicked out with about like 12 seconds left, so I missed that last shots, but I know the previous couple possessions they had him face guarding him
Oh,
with some
dude.
shadowing from
There
JJJ.
was like 5.5 seconds left, right? They get a rebound, they call a timeout, so they inbound the ball, 5.5 seconds left at half court. And Edwards makes no attempt to get to the rim and jacks up a contested like 3-pointer fading away like he's in his backyard pretending to be Jordan. You know, when you do that and you airball the thing and you look
Oh,
around to see if anyone was looking, it totally airballed.
man,
Yeah.
yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Um,
He's having fun, Anthony Edwards, but Claire, I don't know if winning keeps him up at night. I'll just say that it's not fantasy related. I
yeah,
still love him. I think he loves being the guy.
he does. There's it's scary to see what growth could happen if there's some little different commitment to shot selection and
About
whatnot. But
because he's
yeah,
kind of just plateaued right around the 25-5-5 mark, and we're kind of waiting for that jump, and it just isn't coming
yes,
yet.
I know.
You know,
Yeah, too many Kobe shots.
totally, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Exactly.
Yeah. So the last thing to kind of as we get out of here, and maybe there's nothing to these, I just wanted to throw them out there because these were topical at the moment. There were a couple notable injuries that happened this week.
Okay.
First one is Brandon Miller, who's likely out for the season with a wrist injury. In his place, last two games, Charlotte has started Nick Smith,
Right.
who's 9% rostered, and over that 2 game span. He averaged 17 and 4
Yeah.
with 4 threes a game. Do you think this is a guy that we need to be picking up, or this is going to be one of a cast of characters that they roll out there?
That kid can score. I watched him. He went to Arkansas, so I saw a
Yes.
lot of his SEC games. He's a talented guy. There's a vacuum for scoring. They're a high tempo, up and down, offensively friendly team. And I will put him as a little bit above the Tim Hardaway, Beasley. I think I'd rather have Beasley. But if you're looking at guys like Grady Dick, Tim Hardaway, I'd rather take a shot on Nick Smith and see if it sticks.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, I think it's fair. It's a cheap roll of dice there.
Exactly.
Then the last one I got is Dante DiVincenzo has a grade 3 toe issue, which sounds like it's going to be keeping him out multiple weeks at a minimum. Um,
Dillingham, give it to me.
yeah, so that's what I want to know. Are you
Yeah,
in on Dillingham? I mean, he played big minutes last night.
yeah. He had 15 points, 3 and 2. So he's on my watch list, keeping an eye, seeing if he can sustain a role. But 15, 3 and 2 isn't going to make me, slam on my brakes. I'm keeping an eye on it. He's a watch list guy.
Okay, yeah, yeah, I feel the same. It's tough because I was like, who's gonna pick up this vacuum? Conley's been playing
He's
I mean, he's 36% field goal shooting on the
Con
season. He
Mike
seems a
Conley's cooked.
little,
It's fine.
unfortunately, cooked,
It's
but
over. Yeah, yeah, it's over. No,
yeah,
I
maybe
mean, I if
quickly,
you
which is a shame.
if you're in a 14 team league, Licky, get out in front of it. Grab Dillingham now, and then figure it out. But if you're in a standard 12 team league, you could wait a couple more games.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. I thought perhaps the takeaway is, and this hurts me to even suggest it because
What?
I think he's among the more overrated players in fantasy. This McDaniels, I
Huh?
think he's 34% rostered. The I think the rating system favors what he does way more than what he actually gives you. But there's a vacuum of minutes and a vacuum of shots, so I do think he's going to take a little bump up. So if he hits your wire for whatever reason the next week, I think he's a guy to snag.
It's a good point. The pickup you probably can't make that I was able to make in my points league is Nas Reed. I mean, Nas Reed is the guy who's benefiting. I mean,
Oh,
he's
what?
yeah, he was available in a 12, yeah, well, it's a 10 team league, but yeah, I was able to grab him. So Nas Reed, if you're a Nas Reed manager, this is why you hold all season.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
he
Nasri
can
is great
become one
value.
of those Bobby Portis types where you're kind of like you'll have a couple of weeks where like, what am I doing with this 11 points and 4 rebounds? What am I doing with this? And so you're going to be
Right.
rewarded.
True. Yeah, he's all peaks and valleys for sure.
Yep, exactly.
But worth it.
Got any more quick hitters?
That's it. So yeah, I smoked them all out.
We smoked them all out. Yeah, we are in Oregon. So this has been your projecting the jump waiver wire check in. A lot of good stuff on the wire. So it's always a fun time. it dries up, and then all of a sudden there's a stream to swim through. So um,
Yeah.
please pick wisely. PTJ, of course, is an independent fantasy basketball podcast for the people. We try to dive deep into the margins. And if you like what you hear, please do rate, review, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Please follow Projecting the Jump on Twitter. Me, Flyin J. You can follow at Quantaphysics. Find us on YouTube as well. Of course, we have our partnership with Steelbridge Coffee, so head over at Steelbridge Coffee /PTJ. The takes are going to remain scorching hot. I am Flyin J.
Mhm.
This is Natron Clean, and we appreciate y'all listening.
Later.
Peace.